and lives cute, and it lives on the Drone Life YouTube station. So if you have to check out early or you want to share it with somebody, please, you can find it on the Drone Life YouTube channel. That is, by the way, Drone Life TV. Apparently, there are more than one Drone Life people now. All right, we're going to give it just one more minute to allow people to enter the room. Again, thank you all for being here. Tim, are you able to put the document in the chat for the news stories?
I will figure that out.
All
Give me a
right.
second.
Thank you so much. Okay, welcome everyone to the Public Safety Drone Review. I am Miriam McNabb. I'm editor at Drone Life and co-host of the Public Safety Drone Review. With me, as always, Timothy Martin. He is the director of UAS training at the Regional Training Center. Our third party, Charles Warner, is not able to be with us today. Sorry about that. I promise he will be back next month. And our guest today, Lori DeMatteis of Matrix Space. Thank you so much for being here with us. We are delighted to have you. Lori is a scientist, researcher, and chief revenue officer at Matrix Space, which is a new small radar system. This is what's needed for airspace awareness, and we're going to talk about that later on in the show. So thanks again for being here.
Thank you.
Just a couple of housekeeping things. We will, of course, take as many questions as we can. Thank you for keeping those going. We love it to have a great kind of back and forth with everybody. So put those into the Q&A and the chat, and we will do our best to get to your question. Tim has just posted a document listing the news stories that we're going to discuss for anyone who wants to follow along and comment. And here we go. We're going to get started. So the first news story that I wanted to talk about was Cleveland, and the city of Cleveland Police has actually had drones for a while now, and they kind of have had to go back and forth. We've been following this news story with their local government to try and actually get them in the air. And this is really kind of a hard learned lesson about transparency and getting your legislators really on board because having the drones and not being able to use them is kind of a shame. So Tim, Tim just disappeared. Now he's back.
I'm here.
Any thoughts on this? I mean, we've talked a little bit about this before, but the commission kind of keeps tweaking what the drone policy should look like. Is there a way to avoid this? This could have been avoided or not really?
No, I don't think it can be avoided. I think it's a good reminder. What I like about these stories, it's a good reminder that agencies all across this country are still in various stages of starting their drone programs, and some struggle like this. Some have zero resistance and go straight to DFR 2.0. But I think DFR 2.0 and DFR in general have dominated the headlines, and it's important to have stories like these to kind of get everybody back to reality that there are still agencies out there that are starting from scratch, and then having to not just start from scratch, but having to back up. And in this case, the they're aware of it. They're taking it slow. They're making their progress public, which I think is important. Eventually, they had another agency come in and do a demo of capabilities. So I think they're doing it right. And for those agencies that are starting out, um, this is the kiss of death for a lot of drone programs. Skipping the whole, hey, public, we're going to do this. So it's a good reminder. Always a good reminder that this is a really important stage in the program development.
All right, Tim, I'm going to have to ask you to repost that to everyone, not just host and
Oh,
panelists.
okay.
Sorry, that
Yeah.
that came
Yeah.
up.
Not my
Lori,
strong point here.
no, that's okay. Lori, any thoughts on this?
I think that I think there's better awareness and acceptance now than ever because of New Jersey. And so there is a wait a minute, I want to know what's going on. And our police teams can help us going on, right? And that's one of the things that Matrix Space has is a small form factor that you can stick in your backyard or somebody's backyard and leave it there overnight with utilizing a battery and come back and pick it up the next day and see what's really happening in Mrs. Jones' backyard, as I like to say. But I think there's so many things that the police can do, and I'll talk about it later, what I'm seeing with some of the police forces to gain and garner that community acceptance.
Yeah. And certainly having other agencies come out to do a demo is a fabulous way. Everybody on this call certainly has heard of drone responders, but that's what it's all about, right? Is leveraging the other
Well, it's leveraging
agencies.
each other and it's leveraging across the community and the organization. So I think
Yeah.
it's very, very important. And, I think another thing that's facilitating it is the fact that our rules have changed. I look at where Brandon and I writing one of the first waivers ever in the industry way back with the city of Pearland. And now we look at what can happen in a couple of days, as Charles and Tim just stated. You can get a waiver now, or what we would call a cow, in 3, 4, 5 days. So it's not the 87. I think at one point, Brandon and I counted, it was 115 pages that we did. And we had over 92 people on the line from the FAA listening to our conversation when we went through the document. So what a change. And it will continue to grow and adopt.
Yeah. And for people just starting out, even just having, if you're a smaller community, you don't need to go straight to waiver process and straight to
Right.
DFR. That's
Let's have
absolutely.
it there, fly it, have the support to save somebody's life. I think that when people understand what can be done for them and their loved ones, that's when the aha moment comes, is like, oh my goodness, this isn't just something that can be used as far as the scared factor of, oh, I've got something looking my window. No, this is all about making sure everybody can stay safe, or making sure somebody can get to you faster if you have an issue going on, like a car accident or something, a fire, different scenarios.
Which is perfect segue into our next. You teed me up there beautifully. It's a perfect segue into our next story, because our next story is about the police. You know, of course, anything goes wrong in your community, who do you call? You call the police. And so now we're talking about sort of police drones being used for disaster response, right? You have a climate emergency, you have a flood, you have a fire, you have a tornado, you have anything, and those police drones are going right into disaster response, to seeing what's going on out there. And I think that the reason I wanted to kind of bring this out specifically is to have that on everybody's radar as things kind of get crazier and crazier with storms and so forth. That this is a really critical need that the communities have, and it's a critical use case for drones in law enforcement.
And think about all the fires.
Right.
There would have been an extra, the side of the rogue drone that happened in Southern California. But if we could have been flying drones, making sure where the key spots, where the key hot spots are, where the problems were, would be able to direct the water resources that we had on the few planes that were available to those teams. And that could have been a really big difference. Or they would have been able to be flying a drone over the hotspot area that they had thought they had taken out, but potentially wasn't taken out, that could have seen that there was something starting to start to emulate there, and that they needed to go back in and firefight that area. And it could have probably saved that whole fire coming down that canyon. So there's a lot of things that can be done with these technologies and with these tools. And rather than having everybody have to rely on tools and technology that's 60, 70, 80 years old, let's get to the next generation of things.
Yeah. What do you see in that, Tim? Are you doing, when you do training, are you incorporating disaster response scenarios, or what do departments want in their training? Are they thinking along those lines?
Yeah, it's certainly regional. You don't have if you don't have a lot of disasters, you're not thinking about disaster response versus areas, especially lately the southeast or the southwest, I should say. They're that's on their minds all the time. Is what equipment do we need to respond to these disasters, versus areas that really don't see it that much. Of course, it could happen to all of us at any time. We could have a major earthquake here in California, and all of a sudden we have to have disaster response. So yeah, I think most agencies plan for it and train for it. We certainly include it into almost all of our training in some capacity. It's like you have to think about disaster response. What tools do you need? But yeah, it really is regional, about how many agencies are really prepared for it, based on past experience or the probability that they're going to have more of a disaster. And not every drone is created equal. There's disaster response. DFR is going to give you that ability to see from above and really get an assessment. But if you need to go down and start doing low level interior, rubble pile type flying, then you're going to need the right equipment for that. And sometimes that equipment doesn't fly; it crawls or it walks. So
Right.
disaster response could be any number of different types of equipment. So yeah, I think no matter what, regardless of where you're at, you're thinking about disaster response. It's got to be a big part of it. Both police
Right.
and fire. Fire is probably more ready for it.
So, um, I think you're right. Fires, we have a comment coming in saying, the SoCal fire had wind speeds that exceeded all of the capabilities of aviation assets. Certainly, that's definitely true. But there's disaster response, and there's disaster recovery, and there's
Yep.
just all kinds of uses. So, speaking of all kinds of uses, the next one I thought was pretty interesting. This was in the UK. The first police unit, I guess you would call it, that has been authorized to use drone in a box technology beyond visual line of flight. It's British Transport Police. So I don't know if you have any insight on this, especially Tim having just been at a show in the UK. It's not quite DFR in the sense that you're responding to 911 calls, but it's more sort of setting up um, awareness in spaces where you have frequent incursions, trespass, and so forth. So,
Yeah, they are. The British Transport Police have been using drones for a while now, and if you've been over there, especially in the UK, the train systems are so complex and widespread. You could travel from one end to the other of the country on a fast train. So, their program, they're still operating under a visual line of sight, which to me means that they're deploying from their main train stations and basically securing the areas around those main train stations. There's no way that they're going to be able to cover all their lines, but it's really a great start. Um, you know, the the British government is looking into one rule for all when it comes to drone operations. So this is a big move for them to step ahead and I think what their ultimate goal is to be able to um, have drones at every one of their major stations throughout the UK so that they can more effectively, deploy, without having the trunk of the car model where you have to have somebody on duty that has a drone with them that can respond to the station and then deploy. Where what they're doing is they're making it much more capable for the drones to be deployed on site immediately versus in response to something. So I give them a lot of credit. They're they've been leading in the UK for a while when it comes to drones.
Tell me a little bit more about the one drone rule. That's not, I'm not aware of
So
that.
they're essentially they've been doing this study now for going on a good part of a year, if not two, where they're layering their drone system. They're looking at um, if you're a police department in the UK, there will be the same rules for everybody. So standardized. This is what you need to get their version of a COA. This is the type of aircraft that you'll be able to fly. This is the rules that you'll fly under. No, it's no different than what the U.S. is doing, but in the U.S. you have state laws, you have department policy, you have federal law, and there's different versions of what people how they're managing their programs. Whereas in the UK, it's going to be one rule for all. You're going to fly your drones under these conditions. I mean, that's the goal. They're not there yet. They're still doing the studies. Very comprehensive study that they're doing right now on all aspects: software, drones, hardware, rules, deployment methods, that kind of thing.
Wow, that's really interesting. I can see pros and cons to that. So
Yeah, in
really
fact, we
interesting to
had
see how that'll come
we
out.
had Stuart Lawless on our program a while back, and
Right.
he's the one that's working on the program to make it work.
Tough job
One of
to bring
one of the
everyone
many.
under the umbrella. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Um, so we have a new Oregon law that is increasing the capabilities for police drones. That's great. It is allowing police to respond to 911 calls. What came up again in this was the my sort of bugaboo, right? My hated word surveillance. So there's this drive to prevent drones from being used for surveillance. And so I thought this was worth bringing up to see, how do you clarify for people the difference between responding to a 911 call where you may need to fly over somebody's house and surveillance? What's the difference? If you keep somebody under surveillance, you're following them around on your car. I don't know a single police department anywhere who is using a drone to do that kind of surveillance. Nobody has the battery capacity for that. But I think we need to kind of continue to work on how to get that word out of the description to some extent. Thoughts?
We're monitoring criminal activity. I mean, it's more of a it's more of a clarifying the definition of the word versus getting rid of the word. And if you go by the definition of surveillance, law enforcement does it every day. We use the drones for surveillance every day. If you go by the more extreme definition of surveillance, no, we do not target people without probable cause or reasonable suspicion that a crime has or will be committed. So we're following them. We don't target people for no reason. So that's the real challenge, is trying to get people to understand what surveillance truly is and what bad surveillance is versus good surveillance, because there is good surveillance. But we like to term it monitoring criminal activity. It's just a
Or
matter of words.
awareness, right?
Yeah.
Awareness, Tim, is another, because that it's very, even with corporates, the word surveillance just totally throws everybody up in arms and they don't want to talk about it, right? And I think that now people are much more appreciative of what this technology can do, but we need to position it in a way that helps everybody understand and gets them into being excited about it versus the standoff. And I think that can be changed by just some of the cool things that can be done in the communities around it with it, right? We've talked about it from the standpoint of finding people and being to the faster. You have the ability to support the fires faster. Being able to monitor and take action to save lives. Those are kinds of things that I think are messages that get across, as well as what Palm Springs is doing. I'm going to bring that to the table because I think this is a perfect segue on that. Palm Springs is doing it as a way to entice kids to stay into school and do math and science. So it's becoming a community awareness tool of where technology is going. So it's going to become a lab that students can go to in 6th grade. They're going to spend a day at the police force. They're going to spend a day walking through things and learning.
Let's set that up first so that, because for anybody who did not read my article on this, well, you're behind. So, but what can I say? But we have to set up what Springs is doing, right?
Yeah.
So Palm Springs has set up Drone in a Box, Drone as First Responder, what we call Drone as First Responder 2.0, where throughout the city they have Drone in a Box installations set up that the police can use to respond to calls. And so it sounds like they are actively bringing, kids, educators, everybody into that conversation to say this is
where
how this is
technology is
going.
going. And then, this is the cool things that, you can do with the police force when you come in, right? If you want to be a police officer, these are what police officers are doing. But also to encourage kids to stay in math and science, because the community is going to take it wider. They're going to use this as an economic engine to bring in the AAM teams and to bring in the next generation of autonomous aircraft and package delivery and be a showcase in this country. And so they see this as a tool to support the community as the first ability to not only do it from a police standpoint, but to make it much wider and much stronger. And also as a plus for tourism, this community is the safest. It has the latest of technology. If you come in here, you can, rather than trying to drive through traffic, you're going to have people that can see what's going on and get 10 ambulances versus 1 ambulance. There's just a whole bunch of different things with the response times. That's the leading edge. That's what Palm Springs is doing. And I think if we can frame it and just change that little bit of away from surveillance to awareness to being able to be cognitive of what's happening in your environment, that just changes everything. That opens up the mind to the art of the possible.
And we had a comment
I'm sorry.
here. Sorry, I apologize, Tim. We had a comment here where somebody says, proactive versus reactive. And I think that's absolutely. Go ahead, Tim.
Or Oregon, this article, and you take the what they're doing over in the UK, it just drives home the reality that every state is different. Every state has different rules. There are some states that not only don't care about drones being used for surveillance, they encourage it. And then you've got states like Oregon that are trying to fight their way into using drones without having to get a search warrant for everything. So we just have to respect and understand that some states, they just have different policies, different state laws that prevent the use of drones without, search warrants and stuff.
It is sort of educational though, because when you start writing things into law, what we have seen over and over again is that it's much more difficult to take that out again when you realize that you have a new use case that is prohibited by the law that you had thought of when the law was created. So it's tricky, and it's definitely something that needs to be sort of reviewed and discussed.
And this
Here's
is
a comment.
different from any technology, right?
Yeah.
You think about it, right? This has been an ongoing conundrum worldwide. When new technology comes into being, there's that fear factor. Oh no, we can't have cars on the road. They're going to kill everybody. We need to keep on a horse and buggy, right? And then it was, we improved cars. Everybody has safety belts. Now you're going into the next generation of autonomous vehicles. It's an evolution, and we just have to embrace that evolution, but do it in a way that nobody feels left behind, that they feel like they're involved in that. And that's what
Right.
Springs is doing.
And I think there's a kind of a recognition too that drones flying overhead, right? You notice them a little bit more. There aren't as many. You're not used to them. They make a little bit of noise. I was at Axon Drone Week a couple weeks ago in Phoenix, and one of the um, speakers was talking about people who objected to drone use, and he said, "When was the last time you were inside a Target? Like, did you go shopping in Target anytime recently? Do you know how many cameras they have in Target recording you all the time that you're in Target?" And it is a point, right? I mean, it is a point. Like you have to kind of say, like, okay, what's reasonable, what's not. Um, the comment here that I did want to read, this is another great comment, that there's a lot of literature that shows people don't support proactive drone use where you're out looking for crimes, but strongly support reactive drone use responding to calls.
And
That's worldwide.
I think
That's
that's
true.
why for the last several years, trunk of the car deployments have not raised very many red flags, because trunk of the car deployment is truly reactive drone use. You are responding to a call and you're using the drone to keep you, your officers, the citizens, everyone safe.
Yeah.
DFR has become the target of this criticism because they see DFR as giving the police departments more of an opportunity to be to have that threat of proactive patrols, because it's so convenient to just launch a drone and fly. So, and of course, we're not doing that. We're not doing that quote unquote proactive flying, proactive patrol. That's again where that definition of what truly is surveillance needs to be clarified. With each individual department has to figure out how to make that clarification and do that definition.
Right. All right. So next one, Elk Grove. So Elk Grove, city of Elk Grove in California, has gotten a BVLOS flight to fly up to 400 feet. So they're not doing just shielded operations, down at the building level. They are able to fly up to 400 feet in altitude. And I kind of wanted to throw this out there for you guys to discuss kind of what the difference between just being able to be at 200 feet versus 400 feet. That's something that, I don't have the experience to really be able to talk about. But also, what I do want to talk about is to point out, hey, the FAA is doing their part here. The
They
FAA is
are.
really working with people. And this BVLOS rule, I was actually on a podcast earlier today where I was talking about how this is not the year of the BVLOS rule. I don't think we're going to see regularization. We're not going to see that NPRM turn into a law in 2025. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I am. But the FAA is really doing their part to
It is
push
amazing.
the limits and get more
That's what I
out
was
there.
saying earlier, Miriam. It is amazing. And I'm really sorry that Charles isn't on here, because this entire industry, everybody, every police officer, everybody owes Charles's hard work with the FAA to get them to move to this CAL process. He has just taken, lifted this heavy veil that's been over everybody, lifted us all up. And then the ability to go 400 feet means so much to these departments, because it means they can get over buildings, they can see what's happening. The shielded operations is so hard to follow, and it is so difficult because not everything is in a shield kind of environment. So now you can fly safely, you can fly easily, and again, you can support the community. So that's what I think is a huge game changer in this. And again, not only do we think Charles, but also the FAA for saying, you know what, absent even NPRM, we want to keep moving this forward. We want to make sure that we stay leading edge in the United States. So
Yeah.
I'll let Tim comment on from his side, but I just feel very, very fortunate, and we're so appreciative of what everything has been done today.
Yeah, it's huge. I think that ability to go above 200 feet is going, for the perspective of flying up there, take away the obstacles. If you're working in an area that has hills and trees and buildings, take that out of it. Thermal cameras at 200 feet sometimes are difficult to work with because thermal cameras in general will be magnified more than your visible camera. So sometimes that altitude is needed to get that perspective while using thermal. Um, 400 feet. I don't know how many agencies really operate at 400 feet. So my guess is they'll operate between 2 and 300 feet, and just having that 2 to 300 foot gap is going to be extremely well. Again, it's dependent on what equipment you're using, what cameras you have, but 300 feet is, I think, optimal for drone operations.
All right. So we're continuing to kind of move forward with, new capabilities and new abilities. All right. Well, we're almost at the half hour. There's just one more that I wanted to bring up. I know funding is always an issue for everyone. We've talked a lot about different strategies to get around that, to share equipment with, local between fire and police for emergency response, or drones as infrastructure with other city departments. So, as many of you know, I'm from New England. I'm based in Boston. So, when I read about a Massachusetts community, I kind of that caught my eye. But there's a small seaside community in northern Massachusetts. This is not a wealthy community, not a large community, but they were able to get a grant from the Department of Environmental Protection for their drones. So they got like I don't know, $14,000. They were able to buy a DJI, larger DJI drone, and they are able to use it for search and rescue in the water, which is really huge for this community. That part of the coast has strong currents. There are accidents all the time. Um, so I wanted to kind of put it out there and see if anybody else knew of DEP programs. Just put it out there and let people know that that's how one state did it. That grant money was available and they were able to get it. So,
Yeah, it's
so
interesting that they were able to get EPA federal money for DJI. That'd be really interesting to follow up on
it
that and
wasn't
see
federal
how.
money. It was state money.
Oh, it's state money.
State
Okay, all
Department
right.
of Environmental Protection.
Oh, state.
Yep.
Okay, that makes okay.
Yep.
That
Yep.
that
Yep.
yeah, because I would think that federal. Yeah, I mean that's you got to shop around because that state money is not restricted to what type of platforms they use. And I would imagine out there they want a drone that's tolerant to wind and rain and all that stuff. So that's great.
Right.
Grant
Yeah.
grant funding is tricky.
It
Maybe
is
Lori.
very tricky. You got to have a wide view, look out as far as you can into ways to kind
Well,
of
you've
make it
got,
happen.
don't forget your corporates, because it means a difference for the corporates being in the community. It's keeping their employees safe. So you need to be able to think about that from a standpoint of who to go to and ask for funding. I know of one community in the South Bay that's working with some of their large corporates in that area, because they can see the benefit to their employees and the safety within their whole own campus. Here in Houston, we have a number of things going on with the program here and in the corporate sponsors. You also have some congressional monies available from the legislature going on right now. So I encourage you to reach out to your local legislator and talk to them. There's a couple of deadlines that are quickly approaching. And so there is funding available from the congressional staffs for safety related projects. And then, of course, you have the judicial monies that come in once a year as well. So those are some of the ones that I know of, in addition to all the state monies that can be made available.
Great. All right, we're going to shift over now to talking about matrix space. And one of the reasons that I wanted to bring Lori on, partly because I have had the opportunity to meet her a few times. You are one of the smartest people that I have met. So thank you for dumbing it down for me. But we really wanted to talk about sort of beyond drones, you really need this ecosystem of tools now. You know, there's software, there's sensors, and there's airspace awareness. And when you start talking about drone as first responder programs, flying BVLOS flight, drone in a box programs, then you really do need to have other elements in this whole ecosystem of tools. And that's why I wanted to bring Lori on to talk about matrix space, which makes us small radar, right? So you can talk about that, but what they're there you go.
Oh, my
A very
voice
small
there.
radar. That's it. But what they're really talking about is providing that airspace awareness that the FAA and regulators want to see for BVLOS flight in that drone in a box, drone as first responder 2.0 application. So we got a question here, quick question, which we can answer easily. Does DJI have an NDAA green blue drone? They do not. They do not.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just typed an answer there.
Okay, great. Thank you. So Lori, tell us what that little box does and how it relates to the whole DFR ecosystem.
So when you step into this journey, think about the art of the possible, as I like to call it, because I was with police teams last week in the Central Valley of California. I mean, we've got problems in California going on with people stealing the sturgeon, people stealing the abalone and the cows in the Northern California and in the northern part of California, not the Bay Area part. We have people stealing cattle here in Texas. So there is so many possibilities, but what makes it is bringing different types of technology to the challenge that you're having. So is it oil and gas? Is it protection of safety? Because there could be something that could be in some of the drilling operations in Midland. Is it, like I just mentioned, on the fishing? There's different types of technology depending on what you're trying to accomplish. So what we like to call is a sensor. And that sensor enables information to be taken and put into something else that combines it into that larger drone in the box, as we've been talking about, or as simple as just being able to fly in the back of have a drone and have something be able to be set up from the back of your car. But when you look at this and you start your journey, you got to think about, what do I need in those segments? And that's where some of the industry experts can come in. So for example, when David starts to talk with people, David Cameron's on my team, and many of you know that he comes out of the city of Campbell and works with still today as an annuitant on the drone program. And so, what is it you're accomplishing? How much is your budget? How do you want to take that first step? What kind of sensors and technology do you need? Do you need just a sensor for BVLOS flight? Do you need a sensor for ground information? Because not only is our sensor doing air awareness, but we're also doing ground awareness too. Where do you want to tie in an existing camera system, as we just talked seconds ago, Tim? Do you want to be able to focus only on general aviation aircraft? Are you also worried about some drone incursions? Here in the ranching communities, they're very concerned about drones coming over because it scares the cattle. Well, it's scaring the cattle on purpose to move them into vans that are taking the cattle away. So, how do you start to counteract some of those aspects and attributes of what's happening? So that, like Marion just mentioned, you have drone in the box systems. How big of a system? How far do you need to play? If you're a smaller community, you may need that drone to go further than if somebody that's going to be in a more of an urban or centralized major cities may have some different needs. So that's how you start to look through your different box providers, if you will.
So give us as I said, came to mind. I have met you on many occasions, but of course, recently we had the story about Palm Springs. So describe how matrix space is deployed in the city of Palm Springs.
So we're deployed across the entire city limits of Palm Springs and now actually moving into Cathedral City. So if people are familiar with Palm Springs, it's a complex environment. They have the international airport that can have up to 10, 15 flights every hour. It's very, very busy. Then you have the community itself is a smaller community. It's 60,000 or so full-time residents, but on the weekends, it can swell 2 million plus, especially as when you have the Coachella Music Festival that everybody just heard about. That's all, everybody stays in Palm Springs. So you have a very small police force that is having to try to manage all that all the time. The best way to manage that is to use technology to better help and be able to better perform from the attributes of each police officer. So they wanted to change that paradigm. They wanted to be able to augment with the latest to ensure that the safety and the awareness, not just, like I said, it's not just about surveillance, it's about how do they represent themselves as a leading edge community so people feel safe going there. Of course, they have a lot of very wealthy people that live in the region. And so they also want to make sure that people feel safe as they are there. So that's what Palm Springs has done. They have overlaid our system with a drone in the box with a partner venture out there. Drone Sense is also there. And that's how they put everything together to lay out to go across that city. So they can fly anywhere they want within that city, and they can fly beyond visual line of sight because it's all covered with the sensor technology. Does that help, Marianne, and give it
Yeah, so Matrix Space is providing the airspace awareness that says you're not going to run into anything. Our operator, no matter where he is located, is going to be able to see everything that is in the airspace here.
And bring it into that single pane of glass that has that vision and that view of everything all together. You can see what's happening. So if something is coming in on one side, it informs all the other systems. So they are all in syncing. So you know what's happening. It's eyes in the sky, 7 by 24.
Right.
I like to talk about. And that's the difference with sensor technologies. Some sensors are only daytime attributes. Other ones are 24 hours because of rain, snow, storm, sand. Radar is great because it can see through those. It's not as limiting as you would normally see with a camera system. So that's, but putting it together brings you the attributes of the best of both worlds. And so in some cases, in some key areas, there's things that Palm Springs is doing as well around that. So just depends on how, you have to look at your city overall. When we laid out that city, we had a special tool that we used, and we said, you need about X number of systems. This is how it would lay out. These are the approximate areas. We worked with a team there to get, where are we going to put them in the right areas? Not only do they have the municipal airport, but they are the international airport, but they also have the hospital, the trauma center is right there in the middle of Palm Springs for the entire Valley region. So you can have up to 4 or 5 medvac helicopters waiting to come in and land if there's a bad accident that's happening. So there's a lot of different things happening that Palm Springs has to manage. And this is the tool set that they're using to do that.
That's great. So right now we're talking about airspace awareness as an enabling technology for drone as first responder.
Right.
But earlier you were touching on airspace awareness as an enabling technology for counter drone, how to protect your property from drone incursions. So let's talk a little bit about that, because we mentioned counter drone technology here a lot. Obviously we'd like to see state, local, territorial, and tribal get some authority to utilize counter drone systems. Let's talk a little bit about this. And in pre-show, I have to say, I was sort of fascinated, mouth open, like, wow, with talking about the Russian mafia. Go ahead.
So I think that there's so many different things. So it's about awareness, right? Counter UAS can mean something to very different people. In military, it's how are we going to take out those drones? What are we going to do about it? In the US, we don't take out anything. We want to provide awareness so that we can address the situation. And that's where I talk to police departments and teams about how do we create that awareness so that we can do something about it and augment your labor teams, your labor force, because it's so hard to find people, right? And you can only, people are going to have holidays, people are going to be there. So this is your tool to enable your forces and your tools to enable your team. So that's counter can be, like I just said, as an awareness. What is happening at that given time? Like I mentioned a few use cases. I've talked about the ranching operations. I've talked about the shoreline operations and issues that are going on in California. We've had the fire. We could have been flying something over just to check on the hot spots happening. Yes, you've got drone swarms. So you have the ability, depending on, again, your sensor tool, what is your awareness? How many drones are coming in? If you've got a drone swarm coming in, different types of technology can see maybe one, or maybe can see all of those different ones and then inform the entire, like we like to talk about it as an overlay. So we can inform every system that you've got different numbers coming in from different directions and you can address it. But back to your comment, because I saw that pop up as a chat question, that I think, Miriam, what's important is not so much, I don't want the community to be scared, oh, you're going to shoot things in my sky and have it come down your house. No. What we're trying to do is create awareness so we can start to report, so we can start to say, okay, this is what's happening in our communities, like what happened in New Jersey. There was so much consternation in November. Is it a plane? Is it a drone? Is somebody peeking in my backyard? Could have thrown up one of our systems very, very inexpensively, left it in Mrs. Jones' backyard, come back and read the information and determined, you know what, it was a helicopter, then it was a drone, then it was a drone, and then it was whatever. Or, it wasn't anything that night, it was a shooting star. But it's just a matter of what it is, what you're trying to do, and using that right technology, that right tool for the situation. Now,
Laura, can you
Yeah.
describe what you're, and going back to that drone swarm question, can you describe what your system shows? Is it showing type of drone? Is it showing just a blip?
So we show the moving object and classify it to the point of, we can tell from the standpoint that it's, because of how fast it's flying, where it's flying, how it's flying, we can give you a probability around that it's a drone versus a general aviation aircraft versus what we would consider like a person walking or something else that's in the environment, like a tree moving. We move out that clutter and really start to hone in on, is this a drone or is this something else? Now, when you start to talk about it, is it a DJI specific with this and has 4 cameras on it? No, we're not going to be able to tell you that. But that's where some of the counter systems can come in with their classifications and their libraries. What we're going to be able to give you is the intelligence to say, I've got something going on. Now, I may want to cue a camera to it, right? And get a, exact picture of that. Or I may just want to send somebody out there to address and look at that situation.
And how large an object could it detect?
So that's a great question. We can track a golf ball at like 350 meters all the way out to a Blackhawk, 3.5 kilometers.
Wow.
Moving motor vehicles, we've proven that we can do vehicles about 4 kilometers. So it just really depends on the size of the object. We had some tests. Somebody was doing a one of the very tiny DJIs that you can buy at your neighborhood Costco for a couple $100. We were able to show that at Warren College 3 weeks ago. I think it was like 200 meters out. So it just depends. And we were following it through the tree lines. It just depends on the environment, what you can see. Some of them are very clear, easy to work with. Other ones have got air conditioning units happening. You've got subway trains above subway ground. So you just have to manage through that so you can see what objects are around that are important to the end user. Does that sort of help you guys understand that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Tim, I saw you were going to answer a question.
Yeah, actually I meant to type it, but
Okay.
the question was about, and maybe Lori knows this, the question is about LTE operated drones, using cell service to operate drones, and who decides what cell provider you use. And I think that's a lot of that's dictated on the actual software that you're using. Different software providers use different cell providers for various reasons. I don't think that really is a decision of the police department to make that. It's more the vendor.
So, it's very interesting. So for example, in Palm Springs, they have already a system, and I forget the name of it, but if somebody reaches out to me, I can give it to you. They have a system that's already set up across all of their traffic lights. So they're going to use that to enable them to get the information on all of their box situation. Now, there's a couple of them that will be direct Ethernet, but the rest of them they're going to work through that process rather than having LTE and individual. Some of our communities are using FirstNet and some of them are using Verizon. So you've got LTE. Other ones are actually looking at Starlink, because it's in some of the more complex situations, it's very clean and very clear and works very good. So
I think that's T-Mobile's ultimate plan is to go from LTE to Starlink and operate their drones off of that versus LTE.
Exactly. So it really depends on your topology and what you're trying to do, whether you have the capability of keeping it local or whether you need to go up into quote unquote the cloud. Now, some of the other things that are important for teams to consider is the fact that your data, right? Can you hold data? If I lose that C2 link, not only for the drone, but if I lose that C2 link into my presentation layer, as I like to call it, where I'm doing all my analysis, can your system support the ability to hold that storage? And that's one of the things when I was talking about Mrs. Jones' backyard. Come back, pick it up. You don't need LTE. You don't need to monitor it. You can have one of your younger team members that are part of those programs just come in, set it up in that backyard, come back the next day after school, pick it up and look at it. So there's ways of being able to handle different situations without having to go to the cloud. So we store data in our bigger systems for 30 days and our smaller systems up to 12 days.
So I wanted to, okay, wait a sec. Let me get to a question.
Wayne Burke is just asking a great question, which is about the dark drones.
You take it.
Yeah. And so, that is like front and center, right? We're seeing it right now in our military. We've been working with our Army literally around the clock around these kinds of situations. And that's one of the values that our sensor technology brings to the table is it doesn't matter if it's dark, if it's running off of fiber optic, if it's cut its GPS signal, and I'll talk about that with planes. We are able to track it because it's a moving object. Now, from a standpoint of planes, let me bring you something that's going on, at least in the Central Valley, so you're aware of it for your communities. Central Valley, California, we have a lot of rural airports. If you've been up there, you may be familiar. You may have even gone to Harris Ranch. It's an airport right there on I-5. It's a rest stop, and then people will fly in, have dinner, or fly out on their ways to wherever they're going. That we're having trouble right now with those airports because they're not manned, and people are flying in. They are in and out in 10 minutes, and they're doing their drug drops. And so it is, you just can't man all those, but we need those airports in California, and especially in Central Valley because of fires, because it's right against the Sierra Nevada range. So there's things that we can do with this technology because it's so portable. You can set it up in 5 minutes. You can stick it out there, have a plane come in. You can see that plane has come in. Now you can swarm with your teams, address the situation on the ground, take them all away, and then come back and pick it up. And they have no idea how you tracked it. So that's some of the differences of what, different technologies for different attributes that are going on in the environment. That's what I always keep.
Are you guys tying in remote ID to overlay?
We can do that with some of our key partners. So that's just another, like I said, what is it you're trying to do, an accomplishment? We have ADSB, right? We're doing ADSB with some of this in our systems, our 360 systems already have that included. So it just matters on what it is, and who we're working with, how it wants to be laid out within that community.
And then I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead, Tim.
the last question, and my questions are geared more towards one of the most important parts of counter drone is where's the pilot? So
Yep.
my question is, do you have, when it's tracking this object, is there historical track data so you could maybe see
Yeah, it's
point of,
really cool. I wish we had enough time and I'd show you some of our screens, but I'd be happy to show you after and any time with anybody. But we have instant replay. And so that was very impressive to the Department of State, was literally there isn't, don't have to go through log files. You don't have to sort through anything. All you have to do is hit, there's literally on our presentation layer screen, you hit this and it can, you tell it, I want the last 5 minutes, I want the last second, I want, and it's instantaneous. So if by chance you are monitoring the airspace and you said, wait a minute, what was that? I thought I saw something. Go back and look at it. Literally within a second, you can see everything that you just may have missed in a last minute or so. So that's really some of the cool things that we're doing for our end users.
Lori, I want, because of some of the comments, can you please give your email address so that if people want more information,
And
that
then also feel free, I know this community knows David. David goes, I talk from the voice of, and a former, police officer. And so please feel free to ask him because he is always willing to talk with anybody and give you the straight information of what's happening as well. So I'm sorry he could not be on here. He is hosting LIDA right now for us. So that's why he's not.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay, great. I kind of forgot what I was going to ask, but I did want you to show us the box again.
Oh, yes. Here is the box, and here is my normal size regular cell phone. And you can see it is a teensy bit shorter, and it's 2 times the width. It weighs less than a pound, sets up in 5 minutes, and only can work off of a solar panel and a battery. So we have proven for our Army, you can run it day and night infinitely using a solar panel and just a 2590.
Okay. So for things like incursions at prisons, things like that, where you're going to want, and is this how, tell the numbers because it was
It's staggering what's happening in some of the
staggering.
regions. And I know you guys know this firsthand. Last week it was shared with me, can it be, I'm like, they are guessing because you still don't have the technology there to really know. And as everybody knows, the camera systems aren't picking up everything. It can be up to 5 to 10 a day.
Okay, I remembered what my question was. This is actually kind of important. Regulations. So regulations now, as we know, limit the capability or the authority to utilize counter drone system. Are there any regulations that would limit the deployment of this tool?
No, well, first of all, you have to be FCC certified. Our radars are FCC certified. We've gone through various copiously hours and hours in laboratories proving what our system does, what the specifications are, and we have that, if you will, good housekeeping seal of approval. So now that you have that, then you can go into and work with the FAA for your CAL. You can work with the FCC for your location. And those are the 2 rules from that perspective.
But there's nothing saying that any agency or prison or electrical infrastructure or oil and gas company could not utilize the radar. There's nothing saying they can't utilize radar. So it's not the same as something saying you can't utilize counter drone, which would have mitigation capabilities.
No, there's nothing that says you can't.
cannot.
Think about how we're changing for security. Think about the security camera came out. I was studying this, came out in 1940, the first inner circuit TV cameras, and then the regular cameras on the side of homes or, just using in parking lots, all that started in 1960. I mean, my God, our cell phones, we change out every year and we wanted to use technology from 1960. No, we need to step up in time. And this is one of the things that allows you to step up in time. It augments and brings together the best of both worlds if you want to have both. But otherwise, you could just run, like I said, on the radar system. As long as you're letting people know what you're doing and you file as, it's very simple to do with the FCC, and you file the same thing with the FAA. You know, you have your belong visual line of sight. If you're flying a drone system, if you're doing it for just awareness, you don't even you just do a courtesy as part of the FCC licensing. It's all complete.
All right, here's
Lori,
one question I wanted to make sure we get. Are you drone agnostic?
Yes, absolutely.
Go
so
ahead,
you
Tim.
can anybody can buy your product and put it on the roof. You don't have to be married to a certain vendor or a DFR vendor. It could be anybody that wants airspace awareness.
We're working with everybody in the industry, from, as I mentioned, Avanture, we're working with DroneSense, we're working with Dedrone, we're working with Nightingale, UVT, Kurt down in Florida. It's whoever wants to work with that system, we can work with. We are very simple to integrate. We work with Ares Security for our nuclear plants, and on the Ghost Robotics dog, we can integrate within 3 to 4 days. Very open concept is how we've designed and developed the company. And so that makes it very easy to utilize. We're working with Axis camera systems for the camera integration. So hopefully that gives you guys an idea.
All right, shout out to our friend John Meehan. Thank you so much. He has put something in the chat, which is a white paper that discusses some of the legal issues regarding usability of data gleaned from detection and counter UAS for non-federal agencies. So take a look at
Definitely.
that.
John's always there. John's always lurking, giving great info in our chat. So appreciate it, John.
We do. All right, we're at the top of the hour. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Thank you so much, Lori. This was great, really interesting. Loved having you. And I'm looking forward to seeing you again on the road. Tim,
thank you.
as always, thank you for being here from wherever he is. He always manages to make it work. Thank you so much.
Of course.
And we will look forward to seeing Charles next month.
And a big shout out from this industry to Charles. So
absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate the time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.